how to get hold of your emotions in moments where they feel out of control. So for example, you're yelling, you're in the middle of some sort of anger reaction, or it could even be for times when you aren't really sure how you're feeling, you feel off, you feel out of sorts, or even when you're feeling overwhelmed. I have a tip to help you bring it back and to help you. It's only one thing you need to remember to help you get a hold of your emotions. You're listening to the Bear in Mind podcast, episode 156.
A podcast that breaks it down so you can break the cycle for good. Now, your host, Tara Rama, but you can call her T.
I have to tell you that I just tried a new tea. So I make myself a cup of tea for my voice when I record this podcast, and I bought a new tea, and it was absolutely, to me, it tasted absolutely disgusting. And then I went back to my old tea, and then I could appreciate the same choice that I make day in, day out with my tea. Okay, so that was the side note. So we are talking about getting a hold of your emotions. And this is going to be especially useful when you find yourself in the middle of yelling and then all of a sudden you realize you're yelling and you stop and you're like, what do you do? And usually the advice is to breathe. And it's important to know that in those breaths that you're actually doing something to release the emotion. You're just not breathing in resistance, kind of this, so that you're, okay, I'm told to breathe, and you just breathe and there's no purpose to it. There is a little bit of a purpose of breathing, but sometimes that's a little tricky to even remember or get through in the moment. So I have kind of another thing to help you bring it back. And I learned this from my coach. But really, you can use this when you just feel out of control. You don't have to be in the middle of yelling. You can just feel like, I don't know what's happening. I feel weird. And this happened to me yesterday. And I did this. And I remembered it. And because it's one thing, I'm finding it's easier to remember. And I've been taught this, but my coach had to remind me that this is a really good way to do it. So it's to remember feet. Feet. That's the word I'm going to give you. It's where are your feet in that moment? So when you are in the middle of yelling and you stop, remember feet and check in with your feet. When you're feeling out of sorts, off for the day, where are your feet? And that is a way to get you out of your head. And it may not seem like you're even in your head when you feel overwhelmed or yelling, but it is a way to be more present with what's happening in your body. It's like, okay, where are my feet? And they're planted on the ground. I feel that they're cold. I feel that they're warm. And you start to check in back with your body. When you can check in back with your body, that is essence how you are going to get hold of your emotion. And really, remembering the feet thing is really such a simple thing, but where are your feet right now? What are they doing? And to tie this back, it was so interesting that I had to keep being reminded of this, is that I read in a book, it was about body language. I don't remember the title. As always, I forget. But this one thing stuck out, is that when people were interrogating suspects and things like that, and they were looking for lying tells, how to tell if somebody's lying or something like that. And the hardest part of your body is to control your feet. It's right at the end of your body. So if you ever notice this, and actually my daughter pointed this out, and she started pointing this out every time we were at a restaurant. Oh, that person's shaking their leg under their table. Feet are very hard to disguise and control when we're trying to, in fact, mask our emotions. Feet can be a telltale sign. We tend to tap them in excitement. And that is why it's a really good tip to go back to your feet, because that can help. First of all, it'll ground you. And it's one of the things where you can check back in with your body and kind of maybe feel it all the way up. Now, if feet is not an option, the other kind of places that I have found that have worked for me is your elbow. It's one of those things that we don't even realize. I recommend doing the elbow instead of your hands, because you are usually probably using your hands, and it can be quite tricky to help ground it. But what are you doing with your elbows? Like, even if you're writing or at your desk and you're at your computer. Where's your elbow? So that is one tip. If elbow's not an option, I have the other one is notice what your face is doing. Like even if it's tense. So you can say elbow, feet, face, and just honing in on that one body part. I would just recommend picking one body part. And if feet is an option for you, then that is a really good one because it'll also help ground you to the floor. Because as soon as you say feet, I just did it right now. As soon as I'm talking about my feet, I put both feet on the floor and they were crossed. Like one was off the ground and one was on the ground. And then it can ground you and stabilize your body. And in that stabilization, in that movement of stabilizing your body, you can easily check in with your body, as opposed to when you're kind of moving around and agitated. If you plant your feet and go, okay, feet, it brings you back to your body. So then what? And this is tied with any sort of kind of tip that you've heard on breathing. You can use anything as long as it works for you, then that's great. And so as soon as you're grounded by checking back in with that one body part, and you check in, describe that body part. What do you feel of it? You can ground it. You can do the temperature, the sensation. If your foot is in a shoe, what does it feel like? If you're wearing socks, what does it feel like? If you're barefoot, what does the ground feel like against it? Does the ground feel cold? Are your feet tingling? Do you feel like you want to move them, tap them? Start to describe it, because once you do this, you are already connecting back with your body. That is, in essence, the mind-body connection. You are checking in with your body. And you can go to those breathing exercises, and this is the moment where if you are grounded, the breathing exercises will work really well because you can feel your feet and then you can breathe in and then check what other sensations do you feel in your body, what other parts of your body. But I would first go back to just describing your feet. If jumping to the breathing exercises, it seems like too big of a step, check in with your feet and describe what's happening there. Just your feet. And then if you feel like the next step, you've got that tactic down, whenever you're feeling overwhelmed, even when you don't know what you're feeling. Because yesterday I didn't even know what I was feeling. I was just feeling out of sorts. It was a regular day. There was nothing that happened that was out of sorts. And I realized that I still had some residual anxiety from the day before, 2 days ago, that I hadn't processed. But when I checked back in and said, okay, I'm feeling out of sorts, I don't know why, the day seems to be going as it is, all the routine stuff is getting done, I was still feeling so agitated, and it had to do with something that happened 2 days ago. So I checked back in with my feet and I did it, and I could say, okay, I still have some residual fright and anxiety over some things. And then I released it. So I'm going to do a quick recap. So for when you're yelling and you catch yourself yelling and you stop, instead of going to apologize directly to the person you've been yelling at or jumping or any of those things, just check in with your feet. As soon as you catch yourself in this middle of this adult tantrum, check back in with your feet. And then from there, describe it. And then you're more likely to take a better course of action. When you check back in with your feet and describe it, already you're engaging with yourself, you're engaging your brain and your body, you're engaging it in a very different way than how you were engaging with it when you were yelling. If you don't know how you feel and you're like, okay, great, T, you've been telling me to check in with my feelings. Feelings is really important. Yes, feelings is important. And if you don't know how you feel, and that is a very common thing, start by daily seeing when your feet are. When you have a moment, if you're sitting in public transportation even, have a moment and check back in with that body part and describe it and see what comes up. It's going to take practice to see what's coming up, and it might not be like, oh, I know exactly what that emotion is, but you can describe that emotion. You don't need to necessarily know, is it shame versus guilt versus all the other emotions, happy, joy, relief, all of those things, you can check in and notice the sensations. You don't have to go straight to labeling it, because as soon as you go straight to labeling it, you're going out of your body back into your head. So describing those sensations, and that will help you process the emotion. You don't even need to name it. You can just let that emotion be there, that sensation you feel in that body part. So check in with that one body part, and then afterwards, as you get practice from it, then you can go back to doing a breathing exercise. And when you take in a breath, see where you feel it in any other part of your body, in your chest or in your stomach. But always try to go back to first is that one body part, whether it's your feet, elbow, or face. That's all I have for you this week. I'll check back with you next.
Thanks for listening. Listen for a new episode next Tuesday by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Bye for now.